Hi everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar today. My name is Tori Jaffa and I'm the Marketing and Events Officer at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Our webinar today is on Google Apps for Nonprofits and is presented by Ryan Jones. He will cover today the Gmail, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Google Documents, Hangouts and Google Sites in this webinar. Now we will have a question and answer session all the way through, so if you do have a question, type it in the question box and I'll read it out to Ryan. Other than that, I'd like to hand it over to Ryan. All yours.
Thanks, Tori, and welcome to today's webinar, everyone. Hopefully you're ready for an enjoyable hour. I know I am. I have a mug of my favourite coffee in my favourite coffee mug, and I'm all set for lots of questions this morning, so bring them on. Now, today we're going to talk about Google Apps for not-for-profit organisations. But before we talk about that, let's actually have a look at the bigger thing, okay? So, what is Google for Nonprofits? Well, Google for Nonprofits is the donation program that Google are now providing to eligible not-for-profits that provides them with free access to Google Apps. So Google Apps for Nonprofits is part of Google for Nonprofits. Google Ad Grants. Now, anyone who's been to any of my webinars will know I love Google Ad Grants. Hopefully you've all signed up and you're all using it. But Google Ad Grants is a grant program where Google give you $10,000 worth of AdWords credit per month to advertise on Google. You also get access to the YouTube nonprofit program, and if you want to find out more about that, we did a webinar on that last week. And also Google Earth Outreach, which gives you a free license of Google Earth Pro. Now, all of this is free for eligible nonprofits through Google for Nonprofits. I will give you the sign-up link at the end of the webinar, and you can make use of as much as you want. So that's great. Let's do it. Very excited. Let's break down Google Apps for Nonprofits in a little bit more detail. Many of these tools you're probably already familiar with, but we're going to go through them anyway. So the main thing is that you get free access to Google Apps. Now, Google Apps consists of Gmail, or Google Mail, whatever you want to call it, Google Calendar, Google Drive, Google Docs. I've kind of summarized them all under Google Docs, but we'll go through all of the different components of that in a minute. Google Groups. You also get 30 gigabytes worth of cloud storage per user. Now, one thing to note here is that unlike some other programs, this is actually shared cloud storage. So each user gets 30 gig, but out of that 30 gig, that has to cover mail, drive, docs, everything. So a user may have 10 gigabytes of email, they may have 10 gigabytes of miscellaneous files they're storing in their drive, so they've only got 10 gigabytes left. So that is a little bit different to some of the other offerings on the market, so it's important to note that now and just remember that. And the other thing is that you get 24/7 support. So every time you've got a problem, you can get support from a person and get underway as soon as possible. Now, all of this usually costs $5 per user per month. But through the Google for Nonprofits program, you get all of that for free. So it's not a bad deal. You probably know I like free things, so I think that that price is about right for nonprofits. Now, Google Mail. Most of you have probably had some exposure to this at some point in your life. If you've got a Gmail address, then you've probably already seen this, which is probably the best part about Google Mail as part of Google Apps. It's pretty easy for people to pick up because it's very similar to the things that they've used in the past. So you get the same mail functionality as Gmail, except that you get the ability to use your own domain and an address. So in my case, I put my email address up there, rj@connectingup.org, I can use whatever domain name I want to set up. And before somebody asks, yes, you can have multiple domain names and people can have multiple email addresses. There is that functionality, so I can have a user that has an email address. It might be the first part of their email address is Ryan, and then they have 4 different domains. So Ryan at each of the domains will be a functioning email address through Google Mail. You also have the ability to assign a user different email addresses. So I might have the email address Ryan, but I might also have the email address Google Apps at connectingup.org. That's a terrible example, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. Now, there is often some kind of resistance with people because they don't like the idea of working in a web browser. Okay, it's not for everyone, depends on what you like to do. The great thing is you can continue to use your existing mail client. If you're a Microsoft Outlook fan, you can keep using Outlook and you can set it up to access all of your email from Google. Easy. If you're an Apple user and you use Apple's default mail client, you can keep doing that. No one is going to stop you. So you get that kind of flexibility. Obviously, you can access your email on mobiles. That works just fine. And you get that 30 gigabytes of mailbox storage, which again is shared with Google Drive. Does anyone have any questions about Google Mail at this point?
Not at the moment, no.
Cool, okay. Yeah, so hopefully people have used it before. You get advanced filtering these days, so you pulls all your spam out, segments your email into your newsletter inboxes and your other inboxes, just tries to help you stay on top of your email. All pretty easy. Now, when it comes to calendar functionality, it's exactly the same as Google Calendar functionality. So if you have used Gmail and you've used Google Calendar alongside your Gmail address, same thing. Except that we have a couple of other additional features here that we don't usually have as part of a personal account. So things like sharing calendars, well, we can share calendars usually, but we can share calendars within our organizations. We can check colleagues' availability. We can access our calendar and sync it from mobile devices. One great thing is we can share resources. So a resource might be a shared meeting room, it might be a car, it might be a data projector. Some organizations have communal laptops that they need to book in. So you can do all of that through Google Calendar, much the same way that you may already be doing calendaring if you're using Microsoft Exchange and Outlook. It's very similar. Again, it's web-based, but you can access the calendar from a range of different tools. It'll work in Microsoft Outlook, but it also works in Apple Calendar, and it works in a range of different calendaring tools for iPhones, Android, Windows Phone, everything like that. Now, Google Drive is sort of like the core of Google Apps because everything kind of accesses Google Drive for storage and connectivity between all of the different devices. So if you're not familiar with Google Drive, think about it like OneDrive or Dropbox, okay? The big benefit in this circumstance, and I don't really want to get ranty today, but I will. The big benefit here over free Dropbox accounts and free Gmail, Google Drive accounts is that as part of Google Apps, the organization owns the Google Drive account for each user, which means the organization owns the data. Time and time again, I hear from organizations that have had, they use personal Dropboxes because it's free for them. it's free and easy for them, but then an employee leaves, maybe it's not the best circumstances, they lose access to the data that's stored in the Dropbox. And if it's not under the best circumstances, that employee is not that willing to give up the data. So the organisation loses access to it, which is a terrible organisational risk, and we have to do something about it. So Google Drive, in this instance, we don't need to worry about it because the organisation owns the account, and so the organisation owns the data that's stored by the account, which is more like OneDrive for Business, which is part of Office 365, or Dropbox for Teams. OneDrive for Business is also free to eligible nonprofits. Dropbox for Teams costs quite a bit of money. So you will get that 30 gigabytes of file storage per user, and again, that's shared between Drive and Gmail. You can sync your files to the desktop. You don't have to use the web browser if you don't want to. Some people like to, some people don't. And you can also upload any file you want. If it's a file that's compatible with Google Docs, then we can open them in Google Docs straight in our web browser, which is convenient if we are not on our main device. If we need to log in from a internet cafe, if we need to use our phone or our tablet, we can do that. All quite easy, interface is quite simple. Do we have any questions at this point, Tori?
We do. Ray asks, can one share contacts through Gmail?
Yes, you can. You can get shared contacts and share them amongst your colleagues or your organisation.
And Travis asks, does Google have Australian data centres for hosting their services?
No. Okay, the easy answer is well, yes, they do. Is your data stored in an Australian data centre? No, they can't guarantee that, which is a decision that you need to, a piece of information that you should keep in mind when deciding if it's appropriate for you. Google can't guarantee where your data will be stored. Theoretically, it should be stored in the nearest data centre to you, but they can't guarantee that it'll be stored within Australia.
Easy, that's all for now.
Cool, well that gave me time to get a coffee, so that was sensational. All right, so before we talk about Google Apps, let's talk about the basic concepts here. Okay, so the basic concept is it's all web-based. You can use it in phone apps, you can use it in tablet apps, but at the end of the day, it all functions in a web browser. The big benefit here is that multiple people can work on a document at the same time, and you can chat in real time while you're editing the document. So it's very handy if you've got a team of people that need to work on something together. One thing that we have often done at Connecting Up is used a Google Sheet to store all of the phone calls that we need to return, and somebody can listen through all the voice messages. If we have a lot of voice messages, we can put them all into the Google Sheet, and then lots of people can access that at the same time, update things, do whatever they need. Chatting in real time while editing is really useful if you've got a team of people working on, say, a grant proposal. You, instead of splitting that document up and sharing it amongst all of your colleagues, you can all work on the file at the same time. If you see something that somebody's put in there that isn't quite right, you can go onto the live chat and go, hey Tori, that last paragraph, that's a bit out of date. Check your email. I think that email just came through a minute ago, and you can make sure that you're all up to date and working on the same document. So those principles are the same across all of these different tools that we're about to look at. So let's start with Google Docs, which technically is the name for just the word processor. I'm a bit old school and I used the wrong name, I think. So Google Docs is pretty similar to Microsoft Word, except in your web browser. So you can create and edit documents in your web browser. Now, if you've stored a Microsoft Word file in your Google Drive, you can open that in Google Docs and continue on with editing it. Now, once you've finished the document, you can save it as a Word file, a docx file. You can save it as a PDF. You can save it in a number of open source formats if you use OpenOffice, and you can email it out to whoever you need to do. You can also email them just the link to edit it in their web browser. So you can see in the screenshot that I've got here, there are 3 different people working on this document in real time. Let me get my cursor out. So here's their pictures, so I can see which 3 people. They're looking at the file. I can see those icons there, I know they're looking at the file. In this particular example though, I can see green person, green person. They are at this point in the document. The blue person is here and the yellow person is here. So I know not just who's editing the document, I know who's editing what section of the document. And then if I wanted to, we could real-time edit the rest of that document together, which again is really powerful for grant proposals, projects of that ilk, because it's easy to go in there and quickly work on it together rather than having to wait for different people to do different parts. My least favorite thing in the world is when you try and access a document on a shared drive, let's call it an X drive, and the file is locked by somebody and we can't edit it all at the same time. Now, we can share these files with people within our organization, or we can share them with people outside of our organization. If we want to, we can share them with read-only access. So particularly if you're sharing them to people outside of your organization, you may not want those people to be able to edit the document. That's fine, you can do that. There are apps for mobile devices I talked about before. They're all free and easy to access. You get a full revision history. And the other really interesting thing is if you use Google Chrome as your web browser, or as your browser that you use with Google Docs, you can actually edit offline. I think that's a relatively new thing in the last 12 months or so. But yes, you can actually edit offline. With Google Drive though, all of your Google Drive files can be synced down to your computer and you can open them in whatever program you use locally, if it's Word, whatever it is. Do we have any questions on Google Docs?
We do. Travis asks, can administrators control what files stored on Google Drive are shareable to external parties?
Yeah, so you can control what people can share, how they share it, all kinds of things like that. I'm going to talk quickly about admin features at the end, but you do get quite a lot of control over that aspect.
That was all for now.
Excellent. All right. Well, the next part is Google Sheets, and it's pretty much Microsoft Excel in a web browser. And you can see here that, my cursor, you can see here that here's your online chat. So you can see what's going on, and again, we can collaboratively edit on this file. So this is a tool to create and edit spreadsheets. We can export them out as Excel files, CSVs, PDFs, whatever we need to export them out as. Many of the principles are the same here in terms of sharing, in terms of storing in Drive, in terms of mobile apps. I guess the big question that people often ask, yes, you can do charts, and yes, you can do pivot tables, you can do formulas. The formulas are in general the same or similar to Microsoft Excel, so it's pretty easy to pick it up if you're an Excel whiz. It is not so bad. Now, you can still edit offline if you're using Google Chrome. The extension to this, though, is Google Forms. So we can create simple surveys and forms and the data can automatically be put into a Google Sheet as we are getting responses to our survey, and we can automatically analyze that. We can set it up so that it produces a dynamic chart and see what the results are in real time, essentially. So this is where we start to really leverage the power of having all of our documents in the cloud. So creative document editing is great for some people, but if you're an organization of 2 or 3 people, you may not care. Okay, it may be that you don't have the need to collaboratively document editing. But if you want to be able to email out a feedback form, you want to be able to email out, I'm not sure if anyone's ever used Kickstarter at all, but quite often when they come to fulfillment, they'll send out a Google form to just ask you what color or whatever it is. So you can get that kind of information in real time and see what's happening. Really good for small surveys. Now, before I move on to Google Slides, have you got any questions on that?
Amanda asks, how do you work or edit offline?
You need to be using Google Chrome, and it includes a plugin to be able to edit the documents offline based around Google Drive.
And Tech asks, does Google Sheet have macro capabilities? Can you use macros or complex formulas as you do in Excel?
The short answer is yes, but yes, but it depends on what you're trying to do. Not all of them will work. If you're trying to do very complex documents, you may still want to use Microsoft Excel on the desktop. It depends on the exact feature that you're trying to use though. So I won't say none of them, but if there is a particular feature that you use regularly that you know is complex, I would probably recommend just doing a bit of a online search before you jump to Google Apps and seeing whether it is supported. The other thing you can do is sign up for a Gmail account. You will get access to a lot of this as part of your Gmail account. Test whether it works in Gmail and in the free Google Drive. If it doesn't work there, it won't work in Google Apps.
And Ray asks, can you do SQL-like queries across sheets?
Pretty much the same answer, actually. Some, but not all. So you can pull data from other sheets. That's not a problem. It supports multiple sheets, supports pivot tables, but they're not all going to work. So check out exactly what you're doing at the moment before you make the jump. Other thing to remember is if you have it in Microsoft Excel and you put it in Drive, you can always still access it from Drive. You don't need to use Google Sheets for that more complex sheet if you don't want to.
And Mike reckons the Google Forms look ugly. Is there any way to customize their look with CSS?
There is a limited scope for customization. I haven't really looked into the CSS side of it. It may be something they do. I know they offer some templates and things, but I think it's one of those things where it's just becoming more and more accepted, so you just deal with the aesthetic shortcomings.
And are we going to cover Google Forms on how to set up a Google form?
We might do if we have time at the end.
And Mike asks, does Google have any equivalent of Microsoft Access?
No, they don't.
That's all for now.
I guess even Microsoft don't have a Microsoft Access equivalent for the cloud at the moment. So depending on what you're trying to do with your Microsoft Access database, you might need to start looking at transitioning it to an online alternative. If it's a member database, there's a range of those available. If it's a fundraising database, there's another range of those available. We've just partnered with Little Green Light. That's available through the donations program. There's a range of different tools that are available to do just that. But I haven't seen any movement in the last few years in terms of a Google competitor to Access or an online version of Microsoft Access. All right, the slides is up next. And what are we missing? We're missing PowerPoint. Here it is. Kind of looks a bit like PowerPoint. It kind of functions a bit like PowerPoint. You can create and edit presentations online. And again, you can save them as PowerPoint files. You can save them as PDFs. You can save them as whatever you need. You can present straight from the web browser if you want. You can see up here there's a present button. And there's also some tools to integrate with my next slide, which is Hangouts, so that you can present them online. So there are a range of different templates available here so that you can create quite visually appealing presentations. Again, they're stored in your drive. You can share them with people inside and outside of your organization. Different people can edit them and improve them and do whatever they need. So it's very much the same principle. If you're used to PowerPoint, you'll be able to pick this up reasonably easily. I guess the benefit of it being all online is that videos can be embedded from YouTube with reasonable ease. And yeah, it works online and offline, but don't quote me on presenting with a video offline. I think that would probably be problematic. I haven't done it yet, unfortunately. So Google Hangouts is the next part. And Google Hangouts is a video conferencing tool. And it's also a text chat tool. And it's also an online meeting tool. So picture it kind of like Skype or Skype for Business if you're using Office 365, or Link if you are using an older version of Windows Server. Now, when you are video conferencing, you can video conference with up to 15 people per meeting. And what it does is it automatically prioritizes the main display. So this smiley bloke here, automatically prioritizes that to be the webcam of the person speaking. So at the moment, Jared, that's black, so we know that the video from that is up here. Jared is speaking, so he gets the floor essentially, and you have the opportunity to share files from Google Drive. You have the opportunity to share YouTube videos. There's a range of different plugins and things like that. It's also compatible with mobile devices, so you can keep using the features when you're not at your desktop. You can do screen sharing. You can do pretty much everything that you can do in Skype. But you have some freedoms in terms of how many people attend a meeting. Do we have any questions at this point?
Mike would just like to know what your pros and cons of Hangouts versus Skype for Business is, if you have any.
From a technical standpoint, Skype for Business enables you to have more people per meeting. It has some more advanced screen sharing features in terms of screen control, whiteboards. So I can share a screen with Tori and say, Tori, do you want to have a look at this Photoshop file, which is not something that we can access through the cloud, and I can give Tori control of just Photoshop. So she can't access my email, she can't access my Skype, she can't access anything else, and she can have a look at Photoshop and she can make edits or do whatever she wants. You can do that through Skype for Business, not so much in Hangouts. It's it's it just depends on your preference, I think. There are plenty of people who prefer Hangouts. I personally probably prefer Skype for Business, but that would be a personal opinion.
And just a little off topic, does Skype have desktop applications similar to Skype for Business, or is it only web-based?
Skype has a desktop program. Skype for Business has a desktop program. Both have mobile apps. So they need a server of some description to connect back to. So Skype connects to Skype servers. You don't have to worry about that. Skype for Business either connects back to Office 365 or your own Skype for Business server, depending on what you have in place. They're web-based, but they'll function on your desktop.
And Ray asks, what are the practical limits to number of people attending Hangout video meetings?
15 people per meeting.
Awesome. That's all for now.
Cool. All right. So Google Sites, probably the last big chunk of Google Apps that I want to talk about. Probably the one tool that isn't that used when people jump into Google Apps. The important thing to remember here is that you don't need to use every aspect of Google Apps. And in fact, with the administration question we had before, you can actually turn some of them off. You've got no need to use all of them if you don't want to use all of them. It's entirely up to you. Whereas Google Sites, though, is a great tool for easily building intranets. You can build project sites. Some organizations have even used it as their website. It's not the most advanced tool for a full-blown organization website, but you can certainly do it. And it's a visual editor, so there's no code required. You can embed Google Forms, and if it's an intranet, you can connect to all the different aspects of Google Apps so that users can quite easily access all of their different required Google Apps tools. Like I said, most organizations don't seem to use it, and I think that's because a lot of organizations don't need it, but they have the functionality there if they want it. But don't use it for the sake of using it. Use it if it provides value to your organization. Now, in terms of administration is pretty easy. There's an online web-based administration dashboard. There's also mobile apps that are available, so you can administer on the go. It supports single sign-on. There's a range of different ways that you can achieve that, so I don't want to dive into it too much today. It supports two-step verification, if you're familiar with that. So that's where a user would have a username and a password, but before they can log into their account, they need a verification code that's stored on their mobile phone. It also supports mobile device management. So if your staff are using mobile devices as part of their work, it can support that for you as well. I can give you a bit of a look at the admin dashboard in a minute if we want, if there's demand, but it is quite an easy thing to manage, depending on how complex your implementation gets. For most organizations, it'll be a matter of setting up some emails and getting underway. In terms of migration, Google have pretty good tools to import from different email sources, different calendar sources. So migration isn't the hardest thing in the world, depending on what server you're on at the moment. So before I jump into a demo, because we have got a bit of time, do we have any more questions?
Ray just asked, can you clarify how ad grants AdWords are used? But I think that will open another big can of worms.
Yeah, so we have done a webinar on that previously, because that is exactly what Tori said, a huge can of worms. Basics are you get a $10,000 a month credit on Google AdWords, and you can advertise on google.com.au or google.co.nz, depending on what country you're in, and you can advertise your organisation on there. I think we have done a previous webinar on that we can talk about, so we might take that one offline today.
Ray, I'll just let you know that I'll email you with a link to that webinar. Other than that, Ryan, there's no other questions at the moment.
Cool bananas. All right. Now, we will email these out at the end of the webinar with the slides, but Google for Nonprofits, like I said, it's free. You sign up at those URLs depending on what country you're in. Now, when you sign up for Google for Nonprofits, important thing to note, you have no requirement to use every single aspect of Google for Nonprofits. So don't feel like you have to sign up for Google for Nonprofits and you have to use all 4 of the things I talked about before, which were Google Apps, Google Grants, YouTube for Nonprofits, and Google Earth. You don't need to use all of them. Some organizations will sign up for Google for Nonprofits and just use the ad grant. Some will sign up and just use Google Apps, although I'd almost always argue to use Google Ad Grants. Some organizations don't do YouTube, so they never use that. Some don't need any mapping, so they don't use Google Earth. You have complete flexibility here. You don't need to feel like you have to use everything. All right, so hopefully you can see my web browser at the moment. I think I can just check. Yep, cool. All right, so this is Google Docs. Okay, so this is the home page. I've already logged in. You can see here I can create a blank document. I can create documents based on templates. There's a bunch more templates if I want. If this webinar doesn't go very well, I might need to start a resume. I might need to do a proposal. But, you know, for the purposes of today, let's just do a blank document. And Google gives me my blank document. Now I can go up to here and I can rename the document Google Apps Webinar Document, and I can even spell it properly. And now I can, hello, this is a Google Doc, and it's pretty much the same as any word processor. I can insert tables just like I always have. Use a 4x4 table. I can change the background color of the cells. You know, it's the same. You can get add-ons to do different things if you find it lacking in some area. It's entirely up to you. You can see it includes a spell checker. It includes word definitions, word count tools, dictation, and still insert images. I've got an equation editor. It's pretty much what you would expect out of a text editor. So I won't spend heaps of time. In terms of sharing, at the moment it said that it was private only to me. I click on sharing and I can choose, it might be Tori, there she is, and I can choose whether she can edit, she can comment. So commenting means she can't edit, but she can add little comments throughout it, or she can view it. I can also get a link that I can copy and paste to anyone that can be able to access the document. And I can use the advanced tool to be able to do all kinds of things. So I might want people to be unable to download, print, or copy the document. I can do that. I can prevent editors from being able to reshare the document. So I may not want Tori to be able to share it with anybody else. I can prevent that. I can send her an email to let her know that I have shared this document with her and go on I can write an email as part of that. Hey, Tori, can you fix this? So I get quite a lot of flexibility here. I have quite a lot of options. So it's entirely up to you how much you do there. Now, if I go back here, now in the Google Apps interface, they've simplified it as much as possible. So it's quite easy to be able to navigate around, but your best friend here, next to your name, is going to be these 9 dots. If you click on that, it gives you instant access to the other tools that are part of Google Apps. So let's go to, no, let's go back to Sheets. And now I can load a spreadsheet. And again, I get template options. So before I keep going, has anyone got any questions about Google Docs?
Ray just has a question. Can you create a Google map directly using data from a Google sheet?
I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. Probably be something that somebody has done at some point in time. But I can't help you with that off the top of my head, unfortunately.
And Stephanie asks, what do I say to apprehensive non-Google users when asking them to collaborate on a Google Doc with me?
Please, can you collaborate on a Google Doc with me? I guess it depends on what their apprehension is, because everybody's got a different reason for being resistant to this kind of technology. So are they resistant because they're worried that the document isn't secure? Because in that case, you can let them know that you have the ultimate control over who sees what and when. So it is definitely secure within your organization. If they're worried about not being able to do something that they do on a regular basis in what they're using now, then ask them what that is and try and provide them with a little bit of training to be able to address whatever their need is there. So, if they're worried about not being able to format text in a way that they're used to, then you may be able to show them where the particular formatting tool is. Usually it's just a matter of not being familiar with it, so being a bit apprehensive about it. But if you spend a little bit of time with it, it's pretty easy to pick up.
That was all for now.
Cool, okay. So again, this is pretty much a spreadsheet. There's nothing particularly amazing here in terms of concepts. I can add multiple sheets. So now I've got 3 sheets in here. I can reference a cell in another sheet, just like I can, well, depends on whether I do my formula properly. Just like I can in Excel. So I've got, if you're using Excel, it's not rocket science, basically. I can sort files, I can filter, and they're adding tools to this all the time. I can create charts directly in my browser. I can use functions, and I can get access to support documents that tell me what functions are available and what they do. So you can see here the questions that we were getting before about advanced queries. This is where you'd probably start, and you'd be able to find others that you might want to do. But you see here there's a huge list of different things that you can do around whatever kind of data you're feeding in, basically. There's no one size fits all here. Everybody's got a different use case. You can run scripts. There's a gallery of scripts that are now in the add-on store, apparently. So yeah, it's a spreadsheet. If I go back to, I wonder if I've got a sheet that I can actually share. That's one I prepared earlier. Oh yeah, that'll do. So here's a sheet of all of the conferences that we've attended in, was that 2014? And you can see here that multiple people have got access to the document, and we've got a summary of where we presented, when we presented. And so for us, this is really useful because this is something that we quite often need to report on. So multiple people can access the file, they can add when they go to a conference and present, and then whoever needs to actually do the reporting on this can just log in and have a quick look, and that way they don't need to ask us. They can just go in and they can see what happened. So it makes it a bit easier from a reporting perspective for us. Now, if I go back here, let's go to slides. I guess this is probably the thing I want people to take away from the whole webinar. You know, the question before about how do we get people on board with this kind of thing. How we get people on board with it is by demonstrating that it's really no different to what they're using. It's just in a web browser. Yeah, there'll be the occasional thing that will be a little bit different, but you're also getting a whole bunch of new functionality and you know, the ability to share, the ability to work smarter, more efficiently, things like that. So I can set this up in whatever style I want. You can see I can set it up in Google's new material design language, and I can quite easily go through and use this template to produce a PDF. I can present it directly from my web browser, and Google Drive goes full screen. And I can control this exactly like I control PowerPoint, just using arrows. That's fine. Again, pretty easy to pick up for most people, but it's kind of like any tool. It's pretty easy to do surface level things like put together a basic report, you know, put together a basic spreadsheet. But when we start going into our SQL queries and our embedding videos, in this case, it does get a bit more complicated. But we have the functionality there.
That was all the questions for now.
I'll go back to my little dots. Sorry?
That was all the questions for now.
Oh, cool. Okay. If I go to admin, I can show you the admin dashboard, which looks amazing. And is in the middle of loading as we speak. All right. So as you can see, consistent interface. If you have the ability to connect external apps that can give staff additional functionality, but as an administrator, that's up to you what apps and what functionality people have. You have the ability to customize the logo. You have the ability here to choose what functions are on for people. So if you don't want people to access Google Groups, you can turn that off if you want. If you don't want people to be able to use certain aspects, that's fine. You can disable that. This is my personal Google Apps instance. So I am one of only a couple of users on here, so I have access to everything. I actually don't care if I have access to YouTube or Google+. It doesn't make any negative impact for me, but I have the ability to choose exactly what I have access to and what I don't have access to. In terms of users, I can split them into organizations, so I can have multiple organizations underneath my account. And you can see I've got a few different email addresses there. I've got a few different users. Adding a new user is as simple as hitting the plus button, which gives me a pretty easy interface to add a single user, or I can add multiple users and I can import them through a CSV if I want. So not too hard. First name, last name, email address, and password. That can be quite easy when you're getting set up in the first place, depending on where you're coming from. Usually you would do that as part of a migration, but you have flexibility here. You can have multiple domains. You won't need to worry about your billing. You also get reports over how people are actually using the tool. So you have quite a lot of flexibility here. The only thing we had left to do, I think, unless somebody's got a different question, is forms.
Well, I've just got a short question from Ray.
So I've got to find. Yes.
Any issues with Hangouts if participants are not using Google Chrome?
No, because you've got a range of different ways to be able to access Hangouts. They might be using a Mac and they might choose to use Safari. And that works fine. I've tested that personally. They might be using Windows 10 and they might be using Microsoft Edge. It's all HTML5, so if you're using a modern web browser, it's pretty easy. If you need to, I don't know, you can actually install a Hangouts client on the computer. You've got a lot of flexibility there. But no, usually there's no usual problem unless it's a really, really old computer that is so ancient it doesn't support HTML5. All right, let's make a Google form. So I've gone to docs.google.com/forms and I've hit the plus button to create a new form. And this form is going to be a feedback form. And the first question is, was today's webinar amazing? I mean, obviously the answer here is yes, but we'll ask the question anyway. And so the first multiple, well, we probably don't want multiple choice. I guess we do. The second one is going to be no, we don't want another. This is a required question, so we've added that one. Now let's add another one. Now we have a flexibility here in terms of what we add. We can add, if I was doing market research, I could add an image of our new brochure and say, does this brochure, do you think this brochure reflects our organisation in the market? And people can go, well, no, it's a picture of a fish or whatever is relevant to the question. Same with video. If you're doing video case studies or something, you can get feedback on those. So for this purposes of this, I've got one question in there. I don't really need any more. And the confirmation page I can customize as well. Your responses have been recorded. Thanks a lot. Not a lot of customization in terms of the question before with the CSS, but I can change the theme. A couple of different looks and feels here. Most of them are a little bit, interesting, but let's choose them anyway. So you see that that's what it'll look like. It'll reflect that it's powered by Google Forms, and that's what it looks like. I can click the send form button, and that'll give me a link. I can click the short URL button, and it'll give me a quick, easy URL that I can copy and paste into emails. I can send it through this interface if I want, which I might do if I wanted to share it with people within my organization and I was using Google Apps, but usually I'd copy the URL and I'd paste it into an email or a newsletter or something and go from there. Did we have any more questions on that?
Not at the moment. We might give people a couple of minutes just in case they had any.
Yeah, sure. Get your last questions in and we can answer those before we finish up for today. But I do encourage you, if you do want to evaluate Google Apps and you don't have a lot of experience in the Google Docs suite, I do recommend that you sign up for a free Gmail account, have a go at the tools that are available, see how it works for you. The best way that you can work out what's right for your organization is by testing it. I can tell you the ins and outs and the technical things, but at the end of the day, every organization is slightly different, has different requirements.
Ray asks, does the form data collected populate a sheet?
Yes, it does. So I am done with that. I'm going to view the live form. Was today's webinar amazing? Well, obviously, yes. Submit. And I can view my responses. I can create a new sheet, or I can create a new sheet in existing spreadsheet and create. And there we have it. It has the timestamp and it has the responses. In this case, it's not very many, but yes, it does have them.
That's pretty much all for now.
Great.
So thank you, Ryan, for presenting, and thank you everyone else for attending. As always, we will be sending out the recording within the next 2 business days. If you've got any questions that pop into your head, you know, an hour from now, or even, you know, once we close the webinar, feel free to email any questions through to events@connectingup.org. Other than that, though, as always, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.